Welcome back to the Home Studio Photopea playlist, and in this video we're going to start working with layer masks, or raster masks as they're called in Photopea. And let's take a look at one of our previous exercises that we did in the previous video. We worked on these two dogs and we actually selected them with the lasso tools and selected inverse, and then we blurred the background and we took away the saturation, and we even saved our selection, which saved it as a channel. And I mention that because a layer mask, or a raster mask as it's called in Photopea, is very much like a channel. It's basically a black and white mask that affects the layers. So what we're going to do is make a selection first. We'll make a rough selection and then we'll turn it into a layer mask. And the benefit of a layer mask or a raster mask is that it's editable. You're not deleting any pixels, you're not permanently altering anything, it's temporary. So you can use it for a temporary time and you could change backgrounds. Here's the finished example that we're going to do something like this, is take that same picture and use the mask. You can see it looks like that alpha channel, except it's part of the layer and it actually hides. So this is the mask. This is what the mask looks like, and the black pixels hide parts of the layer and the white pixels reveal. And you actually paint on the mask to make things hide or reveal. So we're going to do that, and I'll go back and click here. And the benefit of that is you can put different backgrounds behind it. So instead of having just the kitchen, here we have this sunset. Or instead of that sunset, we could try this sunset. And here's another sunset. I didn't like this sunset as much because the sun's behind them and they would be more in shadow, even though it's still a nice looking picture. So I think this is kind of a nice sunset. That's a nice sunset. Whatever you want to do, and it's not permanent. If you wanted to put the kitchen back, you could bring it back because you could take this away. So we're not permanently deleting anything. We're not permanently changing the background. We're just putting new backgrounds behind them, and we're using a mask to hide all these pixels that were there. And if I say disable raster mask, this is what it started like. And you can see it's crossed out here. So if I go back here and I say enable raster mask, now it's hiding everything behind there. So we're going to learn to do that in this video. I'm not sure if it'll take 1 or 2 videos. If it gets too long, I'll try and stop. But this is what we're going for right here, hiding the background and putting a new background behind it. So let's get started. Okay, we'll go back to Google Photos and we'll find our images. I put them in a favorites album here. So I'm going to use the same image we've been using before just for consistency. So I'll open this up and I'll just right click on this and I'll copy it. And I'll go to Photopea and I'll make a new document. I'll keep this open just to look at. And that's the size that I copied. And I'll hit create and I'll paste. And I'll go to my move tool, and because it's pasted as a layer, I could make this larger. So make sure you put on your transform controls or your transform handles and just grab from the corner. You don't have to hold shift, just move it up. I'm going to fill these guys up pretty much a little more than last time. I don't need to see the bottoms there. We'll kind of fill up the picture with them. I'll do command minus to zoom out a little bit. You can use control minus and just make them fill up real nice so we see their faces a little bit more. We'll make them a little bit bigger. We don't need to see their bodies as much. They'll be kind of cut off a little bit, and we'll put a nice background behind them. Now eventually we'll talk about how to make this image 5:7 and if it's the right resolution and all that. Right now it is the right resolution. It's actually fine what we're working with right now, but I'll go over that in another video. But right now we're just going to kind of position these guys and we're going to get rid of the background. We're not going to change the background, we're going to remove it or hide it. We're not going to remove it permanently. And we're not going to worry about removing the color cast yet because we want to see what the background looks like once we put it in there, because we want to make sure that it looks like it's part of the same background. So this is layer 1. I could just double click on here and call this dogs. After I scale, make sure you hit enter. It might have just done that anyway because I went over here to do that, but make sure whenever you scale you hit enter or you hit the check mark. And what we're going to do now is we're going to make a quick selection around the dogs with the Polygonal Lasso. I figured we'll use something different since we already used the freehand and we already used the magnetic. Now you could use the magnetic and get it perfect. That would probably be fine, but I'll just show you a quick way to do this. And let's double click on this and save it. I'll call it dogs sunset because we'll put them in front of a sunset, I guess. And I'll just hit OK. Now that doesn't save it yet to your computer, so make sure you go File, Save as PSD, and Dog Sunset. I've been saving it to the desktop, so I'll keep it there for now. So now if I ever need to open it up again, I could go to my desktop and open it up, or I could store them somewhere else on my computer. All right, I'll turn off my transform controls because I don't need to do anything right now. I'll zoom in a little bit so I can go around them pretty nice. I'm almost seeing everything here with that kind of view, so that's probably all I need. Just want to be careful how close I am to the top here, but I can get nice and close. So I'm going to use this, the Polygonal Lasso select, which makes polygons. It works like the pen tool in a vector program if you ever worked with that. So you're just going to click to make linear or straight line kind of selections. So when you start, you're just going to click once. I'll start at his nose, and this is where I'm going to finish too, so make sure you come back here to finish. So I'm going to go around here, go around all the dogs, and come back and finish here right at his nose. So I'll start over here, and I'll just click, and then I'll click. Now it's a little hard to see on the video. I'm getting as close as I can. Now I'm not trying to go all around it because I'm going to clean it up with my brush using a raster mask. And I'm just going to go in here, and again, you can get closer if you want, but my idea is not to worry about selecting perfectly now, but clean it up real nice with a mask. And you might say, well, aren't you going to use background eraser and all this other kind of stuff? We're going to do it the old school way because it's always the best way to do it manually, to be honest. The computer has lots of tools to kind of find edges, but you know where things are and where things aren't. So we're going to make nice edges here. So I'm going to go around here, move down a little bit, go along his back. I think he has some hind legs down here. I could go all the way across here and go up and go in a little bit. And then we're going to clean this up. And even if you mess something up, let me just show you this. Even if you went in here and you went in there and you're taking away some of him, that's okay, because I'll show you what we can do with a mask. And what you want to do at the end is kind of click right where you started. Just click once. And now you see that kind of dotted line selection. It's not as prominent as in Photoshop, and sometimes it's a little hard to see. But I have that selection now. So what we're going to do, instead of saving it like we did in the previous video, we're going to go up to Layer, and we're going to make something called a Raster Mask. And they also have it down here, this thing that looks like a flag kind of. You can make a raster mask there, and that'll make it based on the selection. So whether you use this button down here or whether you go raster mask and you want to reveal selection. So you want to reveal what you just selected. So we went around the dogs and we want to reveal them and we want to hide everything else. So that's what we're going to do. And there it is. And there's our layer mask right here, and it's selected. Now the dogs are selected. Now the mask is selected. And I point that out because when you're on the dogs, if I option click on this, this is the mask. And it's basically black and white, and it only lets you paint in black and white and gray. So that's why you can get soft edges if you need to. Right now we have harsh edges, and we're going to soften them up with a brush. We're actually going to paint on here using paint brushes. But we're going to make sure we see the images so we know what we're doing. And we're not going to paint on the layer. Right now you can see the layer selected. I'm not going to paint on the layer because I'll paint right on top of them. So I only want to paint on the mask. So make sure you click on the mask. Now the mask is selected. And it should only let you paint black, white, and gray. And I guess I'll save what I'm doing so far. And now I'm going to paint on the mask, and I'm going to go to my paintbrush, which is right here. Just use the brush tool. And again, we'll adjust the softness, we'll adjust the size. The size is easy. If I go in the white here, if you use your brackets next to the letter P on your keyboard, the left bracket will go smaller, the right bracket will go bigger. And if you need to adjust the softness, which you want to keep it soft around the edge so it blends into the background nice. You don't want to have it look kind of cut out or chopped out. So you could go here and adjust the hardness, meaning when you go down on the hardness, it'll be a softer edge. And obviously you'd make it real soft if you had like fuzzy hair and things like that, but these are fairly sharp edges, so we don't need it real soft. We don't have a lot of, fuzzy fur or anything like that. We could stay pretty close, but we don't want to be up here with the hardness up. Somewhere in here, and you can try it out first just to see what it looks like. So I'll leave it at 70 for now when I start painting. Now let me point out this too. Once you start painting, when you paint with your black color, it hides. So right now it's on white, and this is hard to see down here. I'll zoom in on the video. But when you click on here, you could click, and that makes the default colors of black and white. And when you use this little arrow, there's a little arrow down there, it switches them. And you might say, well, why would I want to switch them? Well, white reveals and black hides. So you might want to reveal this part here. Just for example, if I click this and I paint with white, I'm on my paintbrush, and I paint with white, I just click right on there. Now remember, I'm on the mask. I'm not on the image. If I was on the image, I'd paint white on the image. So I want to be on the mask. And now I'm just revealing some stuff there that I did by accident. I actually did it on purpose. And if I zoom in there, I can see how soft the edge is that I'm working. You can see that's the 70. That's a nice soft edge. I could probably even go a little softer. I could maybe take it down to like maybe 64, something like that, when I go around these edges. Because they're going to be in front of a sunset. I don't need a real harsh edge on that. So that should be fine. And to get out of this, I usually just click up here. Sometimes it's hard to get out of there. And again, this is what I'm saying. You don't need a hard edge on there. You want it soft so it looks like they're blending in the background. And we'll also adjust the color so it looks like the color of the background and their color is similar. So let's get back to this. Now we're going to do the hard work. We're actually going to clean this up because we have to go around here and we're going to do it by hand. And I don't have to record everything I do by hand, but you'll get the idea of how to do this really precisely. Now remember, white reveals, so white is the foreground color. When that's on the top, that's the foreground color. That will reveal stuff. So I could reveal more, which I don't want to. I'll do Command Z. I want to hide stuff. And when you hide stuff, you can use black. And here's a tip, use your X key, will go back and forth. So if you're ever like hiding and then revealing something, you could go back and forth. But I'm gonna start hiding right now. I'm gonna make my brush a little bit smaller. So I'm gonna use my left bracket next to the P. And I'm just going to go around here and just start painting a little bit. And do a little bit, because then if you undo, you can just undo that part that you did. Don't go all the way around the dog and screw something up and then be like, oh, I have to undo it. Now, actually, that looks a little soft, so I'm going to undo what I just did. Now, you can always bring it back. That's the nice thing. If you screwed something up, you don't have to rely on undo. You could just go back here, put it on white, and bring back his ear and kind of do it again. So I'm going to go back and actually make it a little bit harder. Maybe I'll take it over 70 a little, maybe like 74. And keep in mind when you make your brush bigger, that softness is going to be bigger. When your brush is smaller, that softness is going to be smaller. So that plays a role too. So I think this is a pretty good size going around here. You could always make your brush a little bit smaller as you work. As you go into small areas, make your brush smaller. Bigger areas, you can make your brush bigger. And also straight line areas. A little trick I'll show you is you could click once and then hold shift and kind of make a straight line. So I'll show you that in a minute. Let me paint with white here because I think I might have taken away a little bit of his mouth. Maybe. It's hard to see. I'll have to zoom in there. But I'll zoom in and really work here, and then I won't record everything. You're not going to want to watch me do everything, so I'll try to kind of move along and cut stuff out. So I'm going to be painting with my paintbrush. I'm painting with black, so let me hit my X key, make sure that's the black color, and double click on here. Make sure it's jet black. Make sure it's not a gray or anything like that. I'll go a little smaller here, and I'll just kind of test out an area and make sure it's working. And again, make sure you're on your mask. So let's get started. Let's kind of move here. And I'm doing that by hand, and I'll go into it a little bit because I don't want any black edge around here. Now, the trick I told you is you can actually click and then hold shift and kind of do straight line segments. So I'll click, and then I'll hold shift, and I'll go to there. So you don't have to do everything completely by hand, and you'll see some areas on the back where it'll be easier. So you can make your brush bigger if you want. If you find like, wow, this is taking a while, you can make your brush a little bit bigger and see how that works. And I have a round brush. You can use different shape brushes if you want. And if I'm going down a straight line here, I could just kind of click and then hold shift and click again. Now, it may not be perfect, but it's faster. And when you put that in front of a sunset, you can go back and just kind of tweak some things here. So as I go down, I'll try to work a little faster here. I'm going to click, hold shift, and click. So it's kind of making little like lines as I go. And it did that there, kind of made a little straight. So you can do little straight line segments. Will make it quicker than kind of trying to paint everything freehand, because that takes a while. I mean, it's accurate. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I mean, I paint paintings, so you have to use your hands and actually paint and do the work. The software doesn't always do everything, so I'll kind of clean up some areas. And again, if you screw up, if you're like, oh man, I didn't want to take away his back, that's the nice thing about a mask. You just flip it and then go in and just kind of bring it back. I mean, you could hit undo as well, so I'll just kind of put some areas in there and make sure you flip it again. I'll hit X, and then I'll kind of go down his back here. I'll click, I'll hold shift, and kind of clean that up. And if you need a smaller brush, just use your left bracket, make the brush a little smaller. I'll do this by hand in here. I'm not sure where the other dog ends, so I'll just kind of go in there. I'll zoom out so I can see a little better what's going on. Yeah, I think that's part of the dog there, so I'll go up here, I'll zoom in again, and I'll kind of work up this way. I'll make my brush a little bit bigger because it can almost get rid of that area in one shot. When I click, hold shift, and then click again. So click, hold shift, and it's making straight lines. And if it looks too straight, then, you know, kind of do it over. But I'm going along the dog. It's a pretty straight line along his back. Just don't do too much of it. And some stuff you could go in there and kind of do by freehand, you know, just by dragging. I'm using my trackpad, so it's not the easiest way to do it. I'd probably be easier with a mouse. But I'll go in here, and again, if you have tight areas, zoom in there, make your brush smaller, and just click. And you can shift click here and click here. I always do kind of the areas close to your subject first, and then you can always make the brush bigger and then clean up the areas outside if you need to. So click, hold shift, click, do a straight line, and then go back and get this stuff. So I'm going to go all around here. Now I took away part of his mouth. I could use white, or I could just undo and kind of do that again and try to do it by hand a little bit. And I'm not sure where his mouth ends there. That's why leave go of your mouse or whatever you're using as you go, because you don't want to do a whole lot and then undo what you just did, because most of it might have been okay. So again, I'll go up here, click, hold shift, click, then do this kind of freehand, go around a little bit, get rid of any spots. Might want to save, file save, to kind of save where I'm at. I'll zoom out just to see where I'm at here. And I did that part of the dog. Now I'm kind of working my way around him. So I might just kind of skip parts of that when I'm recording. I'll keep recording, but when I edit the video, I might take some of that out and then I'll just kind of finish up. But I'm going to keep doing that as I go along. And there's a lot of straight areas where I could do that shift area. Just for an example, if I make my brush bigger here, even if I went here, I could click, hold shift, go over here. I'm just holding down shift and kind of making straight lines as I go. So I could go down his back fairly quickly. Now I'm doing that a little more quickly, and I could go in and clean it up, but that helps a little bit doing kind of short straight line segments, kind of like what we did with the Polygonal Lasso. Now I think I kind of messed him up there, so I'm going to go in there and just bring some back with white, because I think I cut off part of his ear a little bit. So I'll zoom in. I was doing it a little too fast. And at some point, if you're going around an area that maybe you don't want a hard edge, you could go and make it a little softer as you go. In fact, you could even turn down the opacity. Sometimes we do that when we're doing like frizzy hair and things like that. You could turn the opacity, but you could even make your brush a little softer as you go around certain areas, depending on what it is. On his face, you can always bring it back. Nice thing about that. So I think I'm all the way around him. I'll just finish this up over here. I'll make my brush smaller here, kind of finish this up, and clean that up, and zoom out, see if I missed anything. And I think that looks pretty good. You could even turn off the background to see how it looks in front of there and make sure you didn't miss anything. So basically what I did was hide all the background. And there's white behind it, that's why I'm seeing that. But that looks pretty good. And if I had to do anything to the dogs, I want to warm them up or cool them down, they're too yellow or anything like that. I think in the other video, I think I cooled down the dog a little. I would have to go on the layer. So make sure you click on the layer if you want to do any image adjustments. Now, like I said, I might not want to do that until I bring in a background. Now I think I'll stop the video here and we'll continue working with the backgrounds in part 2, because the video is getting a little bit long. So we're going to edit backgrounds, put new backgrounds in, even put a vignette in part 2 coming up.